This is Alabama football recruiting with expert Andrew Bone on BamaInsider.com. My name is Trinity. Thank you for joining us tonight, Tuesday, October the 5th, 2021. A big weekend of recruiting in Tuscaloosa, a commitment this past Friday as well, some potential commits coming this week. Andrew, how you doing this week? Thank you for joining us here tonight. Thank you guys for joining us as well. And before we get into this show, guys, please hit that like button for us so we can get this video out into the algorithm so we can have other fans come on, comment with you guys. Get in that comments box, guys. Let us know what you're thinking. Again, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Thank you for being with us on BamaInsider.com. Andrew, big commitment this past week. Elijah Pritchett committing on Friday. Now, a big weekend as well. And I'm excited to get into this a little bit, but I want to talk about a young man out of IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida, Jaleel Skinner, a tight end recruit out of the class of 2022. Somebody Alabama has had their eye on for quite some time. What is your prediction here as Jaleel now only a few days away from making his announcement?
Yeah, that's right. Jaleel Skinner is going to be announcing his decision on Friday at 2:30 Central, and I have a future cast in for Alabama. He has the top five of Alabama, Texas, Clemson, Miami, and Florida State, but I think Florida State's out of it. I would be surprised if it's Clemson. I really think it's between Alabama, Texas, and Miami. I visited Miami last Thursday night. Of course, Miami, had a tough loss that night, and they've had some tough games this season so far. So it's between those three schools, in my opinion. And in the end, I think it's going to be Alabama. Now, Alabama has some really talented guys at the tight end position already in this class, and Elijah Brown out of Ohio committed early in the process, and also Amari Neblock, who is a sensational athlete, 6'4", 230 pounds, can run a 4.55 in the 40. So you can split Neblock out at wide receiver. You can bring him in at tight end. And this is kind of what Skinner can bring to the table too. He's very very athletic. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Jaleel Billingsley, a little bit taller than Jaleel, but long. Got great hands and can run great routes. So Alabama, if they can get Jaleel Skinner on board, this has a chance to be potentially the best tight end class in the country. And we've talked about for the last few years where is Alabama going to be able to land that big time elite tight end? And even though they've had some really successful guys at the tight end position, they haven't really been able to land that at least highly rated guy that has come in, and there's been a lot of attention on him. Of course, the guys end up shining a little brighter once they get on campus. But now you get some really elite guys, and I think a lot of that has to do with the way that Alabama's offense is getting the ball to tight ends. I mean, you look at Jaleel Billingsley and Cam Latu this year. Certainly making some big plays, getting in the end zone. That's what tight ends like to see, especially these athletic guys that like to split out and make big plays on the offensive side of the ball. So Jaleel Skinner, in my opinion, ends up committing to Alabama on Friday. We'll see what happens.
We'll keep an eye on it, guys. That commitment coming at 2:30 p.m. Central Time this upcoming Friday. But like you said, these tight ends, it's really a tight end renaissance in the game right now. It's fun to keep an eye on. Really just fun to watch the world of recruiting this time of the season. Guys making their visits, and Alabama having a big weekend as they took on Ole Miss. As far as visits go, let's talk about a couple of official visits to get us started. Devin Campbell, Javante Barnes in this weekend on official visits. Now, some maybe more exciting names with the unofficial visits we'll get to here in a second. But let's talk about Barnes and Campbell to start. Your thoughts on their trips this weekend?
Yeah, these are two guys that we haven't often talked about. Obviously, we've talked about them on the Bama Insider website, but in terms of on our YouTube show, we haven't really talked too much about them throughout the year. Javante Barnes, one of the top running backs in the country out of Las Vegas. And we have talked about this before in terms of Alabama just for some reason hasn't been able to get over that Vegas hump. They haven't been able to break the bank out there and go out there and land a top recruit. And Javante Barnes takes a trip to Alabama this past weekend. It was his second trip to Tuscaloosa this year. So definitely a lot of interest there, but also not in a rush to making a decision. He still has some visits to take. Really likes a lot of schools, including Oklahoma, USC. He's going to take a visit to Ole Miss, even though he just saw Ole Miss. He wants to get over to Oxford, where they're recruiting him very heavily. So I think he had a great visit to Tuscaloosa. We have an interview up on BamaInsider.com with Javante about his trip. Really liked what he saw from Brian Robinson's performance on Saturday. Anytime a running back scores four touchdowns in a game, and you have a top running back target in Tuscaloosa, they're obviously going to be impressed by that. There's still some other running backs that are out there that Alabama is still heavily recruiting. They're still in the mix for it. I talked to Jamarion Miller out of Texas today. He's committed to Texas, but says he's still going to take an official visit to Alabama. So we're going to be watching that visit pretty closely in the next few months. Le'Veon Moss, even though he decommitted from Alabama, still in communication with the Crimson Tide coaching staff, and you can expect him to get back to Alabama this fall. I would be very surprised if we don't see another running back in this class. And those are the three guys that we're watching really closely all the way up until this early signing period, when all are expected to make their final decisions. But then you mentioned Devin Campbell, five-star offensive lineman out of Texas. Obviously, Alabama recruited the state of Texas really well in last year's class and got some big linemen from the Lone Star State. Can they strike gold again and get somebody like Devin Campbell, who's a five-star recruit out of Arlington? I'm not real sure they're going to be able to do it. This was his first visit to Alabama, and it was a home run visit. Getting him on campus was huge. Getting him around the coaches, getting him around players, getting him around guys that are from Texas, that he's familiar with. And I thought that was really big for him. And in the end, I think he ends up staying in Texas. He hasn't visited Texas or Texas A&M yet as far as official visits go, and he still has those visits to take. Alabama's going to continue to recruit him. They still have an in-home visit with him a little bit later down the road, likely sometime in December. You got to keep in mind, this is something that didn't happen last year. In-home visits, Nick Saban, didn't put on his closing jacket and go in these homes and sit down with these families and really sell these kids on why they should come to Alabama. He didn't get a chance to do that last year, and Alabama signed the number one recruiting class in the country, and the highest rated class in the history of Rivals.com. So what's Alabama going to be able to do this year now that Coach Saban's going to be able to do that and go back out on the road and go into these homes? So he's going to be going to the home of Devin Campbell and his family here in the next few months and really try to sell them on why he should go to Alabama. But we know that Alabama signed a great O-line class last year. They have some great offensive line commitments in this year's class. Can they get one more? I think they want to get at least 4. And Devin Campbell, certainly a guy that they really like a lot and want to get. And, he had a great visit and certainly, has put Alabama at least in the mix now. I would say before the trip to Tuscaloosa, I wouldn't have really considered them much of a factor. But now they're at least in the ballgame.
Hit that like button, guys. Get in the comment box. Let us know what you're thinking. Devin Campbell, now potentially, at least some draw to Alabama after his first visit there. Good to hear that. A recruit making his second visit this weekend, a guy that everybody is paying attention to right now, Arch Manning, the son of Cooper Manning, one of the Manning brothers, of course, the first family of football. Arch, like I said, making his second visit against, Alabama playing Ole Miss, where the Manning family has their ties there as well. How did this visit go this weekend? And does Alabama really have a chance to land the number one recruit in the class of 2023?
Well, I think anytime, a junior, that is as high caliber as Arch is, has already taken 2 trips to Alabama. One was during the summer where he spent 3 days at Alabama, and then he comes back, for the Ole Miss game. And, even though a lot of people will say, oh, he came to see Ole Miss. Well, guess what? He also came to see Alabama. So it's kind of knocking out 2 birds with one stone there. So I think he saw what he needed to see from Alabama. And, the thing about Arch is they're going to be really careful as to what they say, who they say it to. They're very guarded as to, in terms of their interviews and what they say about these different schools. You're kind of going to hear the same message about, each top program that they visit. They had a great trip. They enjoyed spending time with the coaching staff. They're really, wanting Arch as part of their program. But in terms of really knowing where he's going to go, I don't think anyone's really going to have a clue, probably until the week of his announcement. We know the schools that he's visiting, that he's visited multiple times. Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Texas, LSU. Those are some schools that he's seen. Ole Miss, certainly some schools that are going to be in the mix all the way until the end. And I think Alabama has done a good job recruiting him. From what I've heard, family really has a great time, and they're in Tuscaloosa. Very easy to host. Very good people, and Alabama just continuing to build that relationship with him. And they certainly would love to add him. We know what Alabama's been able to do in terms of recruiting at the quarterback position. There's 3 former Alabama quarterbacks starting in the NFL right now, and that's something they're going to continue to sell them on. And they're also probably going to sell them on, hey, even if you don't start in year 1 or year 2, maybe you don't start until you're a senior, you get a chance to still be a first-round NFL draft pick like Mac Jones. But Ty Simpson being a commitment in this year's class might be a little tough because Ty Simpson, elite quarterback, and people are going to know that he's already on campus. You're going to have Jalen Milroe there in the future. Bryce Young potentially could leave after next season. We'll see how that goes, but potentially leave after next season. So Alabama, what do? They sell large on coming in, competing with Ty Simpson, competing with Jalen Milroe, being that next starting quarterback at the University of Alabama, rather than next year there's a freshman or sophomore quarterback starting, and you're still going to have to wait a couple years. He may look at it as, hey, there's a wide open competition, there's a wide open race there in Tuscaloosa, and it's something that I feel like I can go in and compete with. So we'll see how it all unfolds. Everyone wants to say that he's down to 2 or 3 schools. It's not really like that at all, and nobody has really a good pulse on what Arch is going to do just yet. So any predictions you see on tops, at least top 2 schools or 1 school above the rest, that's just not true. Alabama's a contender. They're going to be a contender for a long time in his recruitment. And he was just one of several top 2023 guys that were in Tuscaloosa this past weekend, and obviously a lot of attention was on him. And I think I didn't notice it, but someone said that CBS even zoomed in on him while he was on the sideline at Alabama on Saturday. I know he's getting a lot of attention at all the schools he's been visiting, but he's going to be one of the most interesting recruits that we've been able to follow over the course of the last 20 years, because he is the number 1 recruit in the country. He is a Manning, and with all the NIL stuff that's now available for these recruits, he's going to have just so many opportunities, and he's going to be really under a microscope really for the next potentially the next decade, just depending on how well he does in college, and then on into the NFL if he makes it. So it's going to be really fun to watch his development over the course of the next several years, regardless if he ends up at the University of Alabama.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, he is, potentially going to be the most heavily followed recruit that we've ever, followed in recruiting here. And, I think he's handling it well so far. All this attention, the CBS, this, that, whatever. He comes from a family that knows how to deal with the attention, but he is handling it well as a junior in high school. Now, Bone, I noticed there's a few committed players that traveled to Tuscaloosa this past weekend. I want to talk about 2 of them in particular, Traquan Fegans, as well as Aaron Anderson. Now, Anderson, wide receiver, committed to LSU. Fegans, of course, defensive back, already committed to the University of Miami. Does Alabama have a chance to flip one of these 2 guys?
Yeah, I think they've got a chance to to flip either one of those guys. Let's start with Fegans, an in-state defensive back, had been at Oxford High School, then transferred to Thompson, plays alongside Alabama commitment Jeremiah Alexander, and also some other big targets for Alabama in that 2023 class, and Peter Woods and Tony Mitchell. But Fegans committed to Miami back during the summer, and at the time Alabama just wasn't making that big push for him, but he's having a great senior season, and I still think Alabama's probably trying to figure some things out in terms of their numbers. Can they take another defensive back with other guys like Earl Little Jr., Damani Jackson, Denver Harris, all still uncommitted. Well, Damani's not uncommitted, but still going to visit Alabama here in November, still committed to USC. But Alabama likes Fegans. I mean, this is a guy that they've evaluated, they've seen in person, they really like a lot, and I think Coach Saban really likes him a lot as well. And if Alabama makes a big push for him, I could easily see him flipping, obviously from Miami to the University of Alabama. Yeah, with Aaron Anderson, this is a guy who's visited Alabama several times already. Was in Tuscaloosa a few times during the summer. Took an official visit. Was there for the Champions Cookout. Also made it back to Tuscaloosa for a 7-on-7 tournament. So getting him back on campus this past weekend was a little bit of a surprise, just because LSU hosted Auburn in Baton Rouge this weekend, and Anderson made the trip up to Tuscaloosa. This is a spectacular athlete. Can get can make big plays, not only at the receiver position but also in special teams. So this is a guy that Alabama has heavily recruited for a long time. He's also close with former Alabama wide receiver and Heisman Trophy winner Devontae Smith. So we're watching Aaron Anderson's recruitment really closely. There's 3 guys in Louisiana at the receiver position that Alabama's heavily recruiting. Aaron Anderson's one of them, Shaz Preston, and also Kendrick Law. Kendrick Law recruited by a lot of schools as an athlete, but came to Tuscaloosa, worked out at wide receiver, and did really well. So Alabama really likes Kendrick Law a lot at the wide receiver position. So I would be shocked if they don't get at least one of these guys. Mike can get 2. I don't see them getting all 3, but Mike can get 2 of these guys. I would certainly bet on one. Not sure which one just yet, but Aaron Anderson coming back to Tuscaloosa, very, very intriguing.
This is the Bama Insider Weekly Recruiting Update with Andrew Bone. Hit that like button, guys. All you have to do is press a button. Doesn't take much effort. Thank you for being with us here tonight. Now, Bone, I saw you submitted a new future cast for certain in-state defensive linemen. Tell us about this athlete and Alabama's chances.
Yeah, somebody that, in my opinion, needed to have a really good start to his senior season, and that's Curtis Perry out of Montgomery, Pike Road High School. Curtis Perry is a guy that Alabama fans have known about for a while. We've talked about him, throughout the years, one of the top in-state players. But Alabama, I think, wanted to see him a little bit during the summer. He ended up not participating in Alabama's camp. Ended up having a great start to his senior season. Alabama evaluated him, and it's really kind of turned up the heat with Curtis Perry over the course of the last couple months, and certainly somebody that I feel like is going to end up being a part of Alabama's recruiting class. He was in Tuscaloosa this past weekend for the Ole Miss game. He says he's going to come out with a top 5 on October the 15th. I would be shocked if Alabama's not in that top 5, and would be probably even more surprised if he doesn't make a commitment over the course, maybe of the next month or so. I think Alabama's in great shape with Curtis Perry, and certainly need to get some more help on the defensive front. And Perry is certainly one of those guys that I think can fill that void. And they're still going after some other guys, and I still think they're going to have some, obviously going to have some room for some more defensive linemen in this class. But Perry's an in-state guy that they really like, and as of right now, I have him predicted to the University of Alabama.
Alabama did offer another in-state defensive lineman this week, an underclassman in Tamarian Parker. What can you tell us about him and maybe how he leans at this point as we kind of get into our defensive lineman segment of the show?
There are so many defensive linemen in the 2023 recruiting class. So many guys that Alabama is involved with that have high interest in the Crimson Tide, whether that's, in-state wise or even all the way out in the state of Washington, like Jaden Wayne, who made the trip to Tuscaloosa last weekend for the Southern Miss game. There's just an unbelievable amount of talent at the defensive end position. And Tamarian Parker was evaluated a few weeks ago by Charles Kelly, Alabama's safeties coach, but also the area recruiter for Tamarian Parker, and really liked him a lot. Told him basically get your butt to Tuscaloosa. We want to see you. Want to get you in a meeting with Coach Saban, and he met with Coach Saban on Saturday prior to the kickoff against Ole Miss, and Coach Saban extended him an offer and had a chance to talk to Parker. And he said this is the offer that he's always wanted. Big offer for him. Just really likes Alabama a lot. It's just such a deep year in the state of Alabama, not just nationwide, but in the state of Alabama. You look at some of these defensive ends, like Parker, like Peter Woods, like Kelby Collins. I mean, it is an unbelievable year in the state of Alabama. Keldrick Falk. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on. I really like Hunter Osborne out of Hewitt-Trussville. That's another guy that I feel like is getting very close to receiving that offer from the Crimson Tide. So there's going to be a lot of guys in state that are going to have Alabama offers at that defensive end position. Probably the most defensive ends in the state of Alabama alone that I've seen in 18 years plus of covering high school football recruiting. So it's a great year. And Tamarion Parker, latest offer for the Crimson Tide in-state wise, and once again, he's just a junior, but is having a great season. Had 4 sacks on Friday night prior to traveling to Alabama for that Ole Miss game.
That's a big Friday night. Another guy with a big Friday night is your commitment of the week, Amari Nablack, a guy we covered all summer long, made his commitment, I believe this past July. It might have been August. The months all run together during the summer, but Nablack had a really nice performance on Friday night. Talk about this series, Andrew, and Nablack himself, a little bit more about him.
Yeah, I love Amari. This is a guy who really, emerged during the summer, came to Alabama's camp, and we talked about him, how when he stepped foot on campus, he almost had the look of William Anderson. I mean, this is a 6'4", 230-pound athlete that's just absolutely chiseled and ran a 4.58 in the 40 during Alabama's football camp. He can play on either side of the football. Can play outside linebacker. Can play tight end. Can play wide receiver. I think Alabama really likes him on that offensive side of the ball. He spreads out at wide receiver a good bit, but could easily be a tight end, especially at 6'4", 230 pounds. But he's having an unbelievable senior season. He told me before the season started his goal was to have over 1,000 yards receiving, and he's well on his way to hitting that number. Had five receptions. I was about to say 5 touchdowns. That'd have been pretty good. Five catches and a touchdown in a big win on Friday night, 32-29 win over Largo. So he had a big fourth quarter, and so he made our list as our commitment of the week. We do this every single week based on commitments and their performance on the field on Friday night. We've had a lot of great performances so far this season, and Amari gets the honor this week. So congrats to Amari, and we'll see who shines this week on Friday night. Maybe Thursday night. So we'll see who ends up getting the honor next week. But Amari, unbelievable senior season so far. I encourage everyone, if you haven't already, go check out his highlights. They're on BamaInsider.com. Mid-season highlights plus his game highlights from this past weekend.
Go check those out, guys. Go to the commitment of the week as well on BamaInsider.com. And as we wrap it up, please hit that like button for me one more time. Subscribe to the channel. Get in the comment box. Let us know what you're thinking. Now, of course, Jaleel Skinner will be committing on Friday. We're going to keep a close watch on that. Is there anybody else we need to be looking out for that may be on the verge of making a commitment this week?
Well, there's always guys that you just never know when they're going to pop. And we've talked about Barry Brown for so long as a guy that was going to commit in August, was going to commit in September. Now we're into October. When's he going to make that decision? Now, he took a visit to Kentucky this past weekend for the Wildcats to really win against the Florida Gators. But in my opinion, I think Alabama is still in great shape with Barry and Brown. Still waiting to see when he's going to end up making that trip back to Tuscaloosa. Could be back for that Tennessee game here in a few weeks. So we'll be watching that pretty closely. And I think we're probably going to see more commitments in November, December than we probably will in October. But this week can start things off in a good way if Jaleel Skinner ends up announcing for the Crimson Tide, as we currently predict he will.
Alabama landing Elijah Pritchett last week and Jaleel Skinner potentially this week as well. Some recruits coming into November. We're going to keep you updated there, guys. Thank you for joining us tonight. For Andrew Bone, my name is Trey Yanity. This has been the Bama Insider Weekly Recruiting Update. Hit that like button, guys. Subscribe to the channel. Thank you for being with us tonight. Roll Tide. Have a great week.